strong man doesn't want a woman that any guy could have had. He wants a guy that other guys wanted and couldn't get. He wants a prize.
So Rob, you're talking about women as prizes, as if there's something to be won, like at a state fair.
Hi everyone, and welcome to NAS Debates. Today we are going to be debating, should you have sex before marriage? So on my right we have Rob, who believes that we should not have sex before marriage.
My name is Rob Kowalski. I am a reformed bad boy. I used to be a male stripper, had hundreds of one-night stands, and now I'm an abstinence advocate that's been abstaining from sex for the majority of over the last 20 plus years. I wrote a best-selling book called Why Waiting Works on the benefits of saving sex for marriage. I have the #1 video in the world on YouTube called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. And I started a nonprofit that's on a mission to end loneliness named City Fam.
All right, thank you. And on my left, we have Alex, who believes there's nothing wrong with having sex before marriage.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alexandra Katahakis. I'm a marriage family therapist and a clinical sexologist. I've been working in the field of human sexuality for over 22 years now, and I too am a reformed bad girl. Not as many women or men as Rob's talking about, but certainly had a lot of experience before my marriage of 22 years.
Thank you so much. Now for the rules of the debate. Before the debate got started, we asked the studio audience to vote. As it stands right now, we have Alex, who is at 60%, and we have Rob, who is at 40%. After the debate, the audience will vote again. The person who changes the most minds wins. Each side only has 45 seconds for each argument. So, let the debate begin.
I'm advocating saving sex for marriage for very obvious reasons like heartache, unwanted pregnancies, and STDs, but for also not so obvious reasons where people get stuck in relationships because of sex, and they often date and drift into marriages with people that they never would have even given the time of day to had they waited and just pumped the brakes. And how many people have missed their Mr. or Mrs. Right because they got stuck with their Mr. or Mrs. Right now?
I don't think there's anything wrong with having sex before marriage. And in fact, I can't believe we're talking about this in 2022. I think people are very smart and very savvy today, and they are really working hard to know themselves. People are working hard to ask questions like, who am I as an adult? What do I like sexually? What kind of partner do I want to be with? And getting involved with someone and marrying someone without having sex is sort of like buying a car without driving it. So really understanding ourselves through other people, having a lot of experiences to see what's right and what isn't right is probably the best course of action for most people. But again, I really think the decision is individual and that we shouldn't be fear-mongering or creating prescriptive ways of being, because that sort of morality and prescription can often create more shame in people and more fear.
I think the most obvious reason to not have sex before marriage is babies. If you're having sex with someone before you get married to them, there's probably a good chance that one of you isn't sure that they're in love with the other and maybe that they want to spend the rest of their life with them. And if you get someone pregnant that you're not in love with, there's only like 4 outcomes. There's an adoption, abortion, a single parent home, or a loveless relationship, and none of them are very good options, at least not for the baby. Because if you look at the stats on kids raised in single parent homes, they have all kinds of challenges. They're more prone to be murderers and have depression and commit suicide and get locked up and all these things because they don't have a stable family unit at home.
The statistics are showing that fewer people are getting pregnant outside of wedlock. There are studies that show that people that are using contraception, predominantly condoms and another form of contraception, are really quite safe. And we know that teenage pregnancy has been declining since 1991 and continues on the decline. So sex before marriage is not the problem, it's a lack of sex education. And for your point about single parents and kids growing up in single families, there's a 2003 study that shows that kids that grow up without 2 biological parents don't have serious problems. What's most important for children is that they have stability, that they have care and kindness around them.
When you look at the statistics, and there's a lot of statistics done. Cornell did a study in 2012, I think it was, where they studied like 2,000 couples, and the ones that waited the longest had the best relationships and the best sex, and they stayed together longer too. They had the lowest divorce rates. And when you combine that with the people that have the lowest divorce rates, which are women that marry as virgins, have the lowest, for the last 3 decades have the lowest divorce rates. The second to them is the women that marry with one partner. The highest is women that marry with 10 partners. To me, it's black and white. It starts to become very clear which is the right way to do this.
Yeah, except for that study was very small. It was done in Utah, and those virgins were very religious women. People get into bad marriages or end up having bad marriages for a myriad of reasons, none of which often has to do with sex before, during, or after the relationship. It has to do with finance, parenting, their own issues, mental health issues sometimes. So we can't really pinpoint it directly to premarital sex. And there are plenty of women like myself who had sex with a whole bunch of different people before they got married, who don't cheat, who don't divorce. I've been married 22 years and I make a commitment, I keep my agreements. I can't even imagine looking at someone else, let alone having sex with someone else.
Pretty sure that the study that I read was controlled for religion. The people with the higher divorce or the higher sex partners had higher divorce rates. People with lower sex partners had lower divorce rates. And I think it boils down to biology, where women release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, when they have sex, and men release it when they commit, not when they have sex, which proves to me that we are supposed to wait for our wedding night. Man gives his last name, the woman gives her body, and the two people cleave together, which is what the Bible says, and they form a family unit that can weather all the storms of life. But when you do it out of order, the woman releases oxytocin, and the man does not, and now the woman's chasing him around, trying to get the commitment from him, because that's the thing that he's in control of.
So what about all the women that have casual sex because they enjoy pleasure, they enjoy their bodies? Plenty of people have casual sex that aren't ready for a commitment, but they don't want to deprive themselves of feeling their bodies. You know, the clitoris has one purpose. Unlike the penis, one purpose only, which is for pleasure. And so this idea that women shouldn't touch it, shouldn't engage with other people, is very deeply colonizing, and that we release oxytocin and then we become desperate and chase men and we can't live without them is also inaccurate. Sex feels great, and there are a lot of physiological benefits to it besides just bonding.
Yeah, eating junk food feels great. Sitting on the couch.
Not to me, it doesn't.
Well, it does to a lot of people. Sitting on the couch and eating Twinkies feels great. Pornography feels great.
Not to me.
A lot of things feel good in the moment, but you know what? Name one thing where instant gratification produces long-term happiness. Name one.
Yeah, I don't engage in instant gratification.
Well, if you're not waiting, if you're saying casual sex, that is instant gratification because it feels good. No, delayed gratification is what produces long-term happiness across the board. Education, finances, fitness. You can't just eat whatever you want if you want to look good. It goes the same for everything. There's not one thing that you can just go out and do what you want and expect to have long-term happiness.
I think what you're saying is that there's no room for moderation, that it's all or nothing, that I have to be regimented in my workout constantly, that I have to be regimented about every single thing I eat, that I have to be regimented about only having sex in my marriage. There's this rigid black and white proposition that you're laying out that I don't think works for everybody. I'm an incredibly disciplined person. So you're talking about the wrong person when it comes to impulse control issues. I don't have them. But there is plenty of room for moderation in that also. It's not all or nothing. So to say that casual sex is the equivalent of junk food sounds very, I'm sorry, but moralistic to me.
Yeah, I know there have been times where I was horny and I slept with a girl that I wasn't really interested in, and I felt the exact same way as when I was dieting and I ate a pizza. Like, I shouldn't have done that.
Well, look, I have a lot of clients that are sex addicts. They're sexually addicted and compulsive. They come from broken homes. They were abused emotionally, physically, sexually, you name it. And they seek sex, and they seek it for love. They seek it to manage their mood, their emotions. They don't want to be alone and lonely. And so the sex is not the problem. It's the abuse of the problem that makes people sick. Just like pizza or chocolate cake. Chocolate cake's not the problem, but if I eat an entire chocolate cake, I'm going to be sick.
It still goes back to the fact that when you have sex with someone that you're not sure that you want to be with, you get yourself into something complicated. There are hormones released on both sides, you even said that, and you can develop feelings with someone and it can feel like love when it's not really love at all. Imagine you and I were dating and I said, Alex, I love you, let's have sex, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And you said, Rob, I love you too. Let's just run down to the Justice of the Peace real quick and get married. I'd be like, you know, let me think about this a little longer. And that's the point. That's what marriage does. Now I'm going to see do I really like this person? Am I really in love with her? Because if without marriage, I could convince myself that I really care for you, just so I could get up some tail.
Yeah, I think that's true. But if that's the kind of person you are, and I don't have
that's human
discernment on board to say this guy is a charlatan, he's just doing it because he wants to have sex, then I've got to look at my issues.
Yeah, that's human. we're selfish by nature, and we can deceive ourselves into thinking that something's true when it's not. But because you attach marriage to the conversation, you know that a divorce is going to be painful. And that's what forces you to ask yourself to find out if your heart's lying to you or not. Because you could just be telling yourself some fib because you want to have sex.
Okay, it seems like that your notion of marriage is that it's got to be tied to love. But marriage was never about love. Marriage was initially about economic reasons. That's why people got together. They got together because they had to farm and they had to make a lot of kids. So it was for economic reasons. It's never been for love. And this idea of eyeball to eyeball intimacy while we're having sex for the purposes of love and not procreation is a relatively new feature in the human organism. And that's why we're not getting it right. I don't think it's because of premarital sex. I think plenty of people get married, they think they're in love, they're having sex, and then the marriage goes sideways. And it's not because of the premarital sex.
I think it 100% is. If try before you buy, which is what everybody says to me, they says you got to take it for a car for a test drive before you buy it. If that works so well, why is the divorce rate 50% when everybody's doing that? 97% of the population doesn't wait. The divorce rate's 50%. And my thing is I believe that the other 50% that stay together, they're not that happy. They stay together for the kids and finances and all their BS. But they're not staying in it because they're in love, because they never asked themselves the hard questions on the front end, and they drifted into a relationship with somebody they were having sex with, and then they ended up with the wrong person, and then the marriage went south, like you just said. The hard questions like, is this my best yes? Is this everything that I want? Am I willing to go all in order to have sex with this person?
So I've had a number of clients that have waited for that very reasons, all of them recovering sex addicts, and many of them are miserable afterwards because the sex isn't what they were hoping it was going to be. Their partner had a lower sex drive than they had. Their partner didn't even like sex. And the chasm that they had to cross was impossible in some cases, and they ended up divorcing even though they waited.
The studies show that people that do wait have a far less likely chance of getting a divorce. And I would say to those people, don't get married because your vows mean nothing. Because if you and I got married, because let's say we were having sex, the sex was great, we get married and you get hit by a car or you get cancer and now you can't have sex, am I going to leave?
Good
Because if I am, I'm a real dirtbag.
Right.
But if I'm in love with you, I won't, because love means I would do anything for you.
So any kind of fear-mongering around sex, I think is problematic. And again, prescribing when people shouldn't have sex, what's going to be best for them, what's not going to be best for them, I worry stands on the side of shame and morality and moralistic edicts for people. And that ends up having people feeling worse about their sex life and sexuality. I see people all the time that come in for treatment because they have so much shame about sex. And the way that plays out in men is erectile dysfunction, whether it's premature ejaculation or impotency. For females, all sorts of pelvic pain disorders like vaginismus, because the messages they got growing up was that sex was bad, dirty, and wrong, and you should save it for marriage. And so this is a real problem that's embedded in our culture.
I do think there's a lot of shame attached around sex. I think people's biggest regrets are always sexually related. When I talk to people about things that they've done in their past that they regret the most, it's always something related to sex. So I do think that there's value in making sure that it's someone that you really care for if you're going to go there, so that you don't have to suffer shame from it. But you know, I had a conversation with a woman that was sex positive on a podcast, and she talked about what if the woman's just sex positive? And I said, imagine you were to fall in love with a man and get engaged, and you were so happy, and then you found out that he proposed to every woman that he dated before you.
Well, he's a sociopath then, is what I would
Why?
say.
Maybe he's just commitment positive.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
Just
that.
because you label it sex positive doesn't mean it's okay. That's how men feel when you're giving it out to everybody before them. You would feel the same way. It's like, here's this man, the thing that he had was the security, and he was out proposing, he was just trying to give it away to anybody. You'd have no respect for that man. And that's how men feel oftentimes when a woman that's sex positive.
I'm not sure how to respond to that other than saying that if a man doesn't want to have sex with a woman who's had sex before him, then he should marry a virgin. Because there are women all over the world having sex outside of wedlock, to your point. And I don't think you're going to find a virgin. And if you do, you better be 20-year-old male with a 20-year-old female, because otherwise we've got a massive, power differential and problem there. So it's hard to say that you're going to find some woman who hasn't had sex with a whole bunch of people, and that men don't respect women that have had a lot of sex.
I'm not saying that you're going to be able to easily find a person who hasn't had sex with a lot of people. You may never find that person. I'm just saying what's best, because I can tell you this: a strong man doesn't want a woman that any guy could have had. He wants a guy that other guys wanted and couldn't get. He wants a prize. Now, a woman that does that, she might find a weak man to wife her up, but she's not going to be happy with that because she wants a strong man.
So Rob, you're talking about women as prizes, as if there's something to be won, like at a state fair. And I have a problem with that language. When you talk about strong men, women as prizes, there is an inherent sort of patriarchal and, dare I say, even toxic masculine way of framing things when you language it that way.
You said earlier that you wouldn't buy a car without taking it for a test drive. You're comparing a person to a vehicle? Really?
Oh, I'm comparing a person to everything. I
Okay.
wouldn't buy anything without trying it
I'm
first.
comparing a woman to a prize that you want to win. Exactly.
Oh, I see. But even that there's an interesting power differential in that also. It's something I've got to go get.
In my 10 Reasons video, I talk about something that I call the sex trap. And basically, it's when you start engaging in sex before marriage with someone, and for me, one of two things would always happen. Either I would immediately lose interest the moment I ejaculated, or we would continue sleeping together, and at some point, I had to either make her my girlfriend or make the decision to let her go, and knowing that other people were going to sleep with her. And by then, we were already in something complicated. I was already starting to feel a little territorial over. So I would make the decision to make her my girlfriend, but it wasn't out of love. It was out of obligation because we had been dating for 3 months and I knew she was putting up with my crap, and now I felt like I owed it to her. And my first girlfriend I spent 5 years with for that exact reason. And that's what I see happen for so many people, where the man makes the woman his girlfriend or his wife because she's giving him the sex.
Well, that tells me that those are people that don't really know themselves, that don't really stand up for what's true for them. And that seems kind of icky to me, like sex out of obligation, marriage out of obligation, marriage out of just kind of de facto because you're there, so I'll just take it. That's not really choosing or being chosen.
Yeah.
That's not a hell yes. I think you have to kiss a lot of toads before you find your prince, which is the inverse of what you're saying also. You have to say no a lot. That's kind of what you're saying, but when yes shows up, you really know that it's yes. And I don't think having casual sex clouds that for people. I know it didn't for me, that when yes showed up, I knew it was a hell yes. It was 100% right for me at that time in my life, and I made that decision in that moment.
So when women fall in love, their amygdala shuts off in their brain, which is the warning system, and that's why women miss red flags. And they do drift into relationships with people that are alcoholics and cheaters because they gave the sex early and they weren't seeing all the signs.
Okay, so when women fall in love, their right amygdala does not shut off permanently because that's our threat detection system. It's where we experience fear and salience and have all sorts of imprints. So to say that women are walking around as zombies, they can't register fear or anything because they're in love is erroneous.
I'm not saying they can't register anything, but they register a lot less and they put up with a lot more junk after they let a man have sex with them.
Yeah, I think that might be true temporarily, but not over the long term by any means.
Sure it is. It becomes harder and harder. Even the longer time you spend with somebody, the harder it is to get out of the relationship with them for various reasons.
But that's not the right amygdala. That is the attachment system that we're talking about.
It still proves my point.
But to your point, that's why we stay in relationships. That's why we bash it out when we're in love. That's why when things go sideways or they're difficult, we hang in there and we work with somebody. But again, hanging premarital sex on whether or not a marriage is good over time is not a correlation for me at all. So Rob, I really respect where you're coming from, and I can tell that you've really thought this out very clearly and you've spent a lot of time on it, that it's really in your heart, so to speak. But I still stand in the position that I don't think it's right for everybody. I think everyone has to make their own decisions. Just like you had sex with a whole bunch of women, you had to do that to get to this point. And so I think a lot of people have to have a lot of sex with different people until they get to the point where they say, that's it, I'm done, I'm ready for the one, if there is such a thing. And then they start to change. And I think that's part of maturing and growing up also. So I just wanted to say that it's been really lovely to meet you.
Thank you. It's been really lovely to meet you as well. I've enjoyed debating you. I think men and women do this for different reasons. I think men are motivated by success and accomplishment. Napoleon Hill talks about sexual transmutation in his book Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about harnessing your sexual energy and using it to accomplish things, amass wealth, inventions, all kinds of things. And I believe that was the purpose all along. That was the the design. We were supposed to find our purpose before our person. Also for men, I would mention that physical attraction fades. And when you lead with physical attraction, on some level, you're always going to choose people to date based on their physical appearance and not the hard questions. And it increases the chances of you getting stuck with the wrong person. I know in my own life that this is 100% true. There's a lot of women that I'm great friends with, and I definitely would have slept with them in the past. But I could ask myself, is she everything you want? And I would look at her and say, no, she's not everything I want, so I didn't do it.
And now it's time to vote. So previously, Alex was 60% and Rob was 40%. So the audience voted again, and the results are in. It is 50-50. So Rob is the winner. Rob wins because he managed to change more minds. Congratulations. Thank you so much for watching the debate. The winner is decided in the comments. So let us know who you agreed with. Did you agree with Alex or Rob? Should people have sex before marriage? Did you change your mind? Let us know in the comments.